There we go. So we're recording just for, keeping it, and we will post it to the OFMA's website. So this will be publicly viewable, so everyone is aware. The chat panel is our friend. Please feel free to pop your questions, comments, links as they come up in there. And then we'll come back to most of those questions later in the chat. And again, it's an introvert friendly Zoom meeting, so feel free to keep your camera off, keep it on, go off and on if you'd like, whatever makes you comfortable. We want you to enjoy this time. We want everyone to just be interested, listening with intention. Please keep your mics muted. That will help everyone listen with intention. If we all keep our mics muted, and do let us know, especially in the chat, if you're having audio or any sort of technical issues with Zoom. It's not always perfect and flawless. So let us know if you're having challenges. And then another little item is that we will be sharing all of the links that are in the chat and the recording and notes and slides following the event. So if anyone's curious about saving all of that, we've got it. We'll share it with you after. And on screen and helping us through all of our Zoom magic is our brand new team member, Madeline Tucker. She's our new programs communication coordinator. She's going to be monitoring the chat. And so if you have any problems, she's going to help troubleshoot. And our entire team of 3 is here today. Our programs director, Amanda Cross, most of you know well, is going to be presenting and answering questions throughout the next 3 hours. If anybody has any questions, anything, let us know. We're right here. A couple of OFMA announcements. We have to put in our big plug. Our membership drive is on. If you haven't already, please renew your memberships. There's so many benefits. Today, things like this are a big part of that. We'll be happy to fill you in more if you're curious about what membership holds. Yeah, thanks for the link, Madeline. You guys can go there easily to renew your membership if you'd like. And then also our annual meeting is coming up March 15th, and it will be on Zoom. Again, go ahead and register if you haven't already. It's just general OFMA official business. We're going to vote on board members, bring some presenters. It's just a good time. And again, it will be virtual this year, if I didn't mention that. And then for today, I'll go through our agenda, slow down a little bit so everybody can kind of prepare and get ready for what's coming. We're really excited to have amazing experts here today. They're going to be sharing kind of 3 different phases of our agenda. We're going to learn about licensing and permitting to help better support your market and your vendors. We'll have a Q&A session followed then by a stretch break. Everybody loves a stretch break, or do something you need to do, fill your tea, take a nap. Who knows if anyone can take power naps? I'd love tips. When we're back from break, we'll move into food access resources. There's a lot of them, and there's a lot of details involved with that. So we'll have another brief pause for more questions and answers. And then finally, you'll hear briefly from OFMA and a little more detail about all of the resources that we have available, how we can help, how we're here to support you all and your markets. Goals for today. Always a fun one. What we will do today, I'll wait for that next slide if it's a little bit behind. We will introduce the Oregon agencies and organizations that market managers work with often. We're going to make sure that you know where to go to get the information you need to support your vendors. We might get to practice skills, something that, just so everyone is prepared, that we're not going to be able to do or not have time for today, is to get into those nitty-gritty details about the types of permits or specific situations at your market that you want to troubleshoot. We might get to practice contacting one of our agencies, so a little more customized there. But if there are more specific questions, challenges, detailed troubleshooting that you guys are looking for, everyone that's here presenting today is interested and available at helping you with that following the workshop. There, we just have so many wonderful people here today. We're not going to have time to get into everyone's inquiries in such a detailed way. So we all are prepared. Breakout triads. This is going to be fun. We're going to teleport you guys to some breakout rooms right now. If you haven't been through breakout rooms, I'm sure most of you have. If you are in a breakout room, you want to get out, you can leave the room. A quick little reminder is be careful you hit leave room, not leave meeting. And if you do leave the meeting, no stress, come back in. Madeline will probably let you back in, hopefully. And while you're there, just introduce yourselves, your market, share the most useful thing that you've learned from the earlier boot camp sessions. We're interested to hear what's been happening for everybody. So enjoy, and we'll see you back here in 3 to 4 minutes.
Hi all, I'm Liz. I'm starting at the Corvallis Farmers Market here in April. And I've worked for the farmers market for the last 3 years, but this is the first time as the site manager there. And I think just talking a lot about the relationship building has been one of the most useful things for me. I'm more interested in all of the rules and regs because that's what I'm the least familiar with. So I think that today we'll have a lot of those lessons learned. Thanks.
Am I the only other person in this room with you? Oh no, we have other ones. Okay, hi, I'm Madeline. I'm running all of the Zoom tech right now in the chat, so I'm going to be a little distracted. I work for OFMA, so not actually working for a farmer's market.
Yeah, I don't know. This isn't a breakout room, is it? This is like the main room.
Oh, okay, awesome. I was like, I don't think I was supposed to be put in one. Great, that means I'm doing.
I said, don't put me in a room.
Okay, awesome.
Madeline, I hit the button and went to one of the breakout rooms, and then people were talking about their, what they learned and stuff. And I was like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be here.
No, that's totally fine. Welcome back to the main room.
This is where we're supposed to be, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay, God. Phew. Oh my.
Okay.
Hello?
Hi, if for those of you who just joined, everyone else is in a real quick breakout room, just sharing where they're from and what they learned in the last session. Unfortunately, I don't think I can add you to them now, but they will be back in just a minute or two.
Okay, thanks.
Meeting is being recorded.
All right, everybody's going to get back in here. It always takes a moment. Well, that was great. It was fun to get to chat to folks a little bit in person. It was nice. And I think everybody's back from breakout rooms now. I can't see everyone now, but we'll hope so. So we're going to move on. We're going to get into our agenda, dig in. Our first topics are permits for opening a farmer's market in Oregon. And Amanda has been at OFMA for years. And previously she was a market manager for 10 years at markets in Seattle and Portland. She's our current program manager. She leads the Farmers Market Learning Network that a lot of you have probably been greatly involved in. And that just brings trainings, peer learning, networking, and online toolkits to markets across Oregon. So she's our resident expert on all things, not just permits, but she's going to share more about permits now. So Amanda, if you want to take it away.
Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, thank you all so much for being here. And it's really been wonderful to see all the Oregon markets at the boot camp. And I hope getting to meet markets from around the Northwest and Ohio was gainful for you all as well. I'm also thankful for the Farmers Market Promotion Program grant that OFMA got that allowed us to pay for registration fees for most of you to attend this. It's great to see that so many of you are participating, if we can just make the trainings easy to get to like that. So, okay, so this section, I'm going to get into introducing licensing and permits with an overview of what's needed for farmers markets and the agencies that you guys will be working with and that your vendors will be working with. And then you'll get a chance to meet each of the agencies and talk with them. So to start with, what does a market itself need permit-wise? Well, on the state level, there's no farmers market permit that you need to obtain to be in operation. On the city or county level, though, I don't know every city and county's rules, but I'm not really aware of a specific farmers market permit that I haven't been told about one. However, if you're using property owned by a government entity, for instance, streets, parks, etc., you'll need permission in the form of some kind of agreement, a lease, or a permit to close it down so that you can use it so you can use that space for running your farmers market. The other license related question we get about operating a farmers market is if markets need a license of any kind to run food demos and to give out samples. And the answer is that neither the Oregon Department of Agriculture nor your county health departments require farmers markets or their vendors to get a license or permit to prepare and give out samples. Food handler cards from the county are also not required for the sole purpose of sampling. However, markets and vendors must follow good food safety practices when sampling products to the public, and getting a food handler card is a great way to learn what those protocols are. So it's a good thing for a market manager to have. You can check out OFMA's, we have a really great food sampling toolkit that we created a couple years ago. It has more information on how to offer samples safely, and it also talks about how to do different types of sampling. Another one, which rather than just like increasing sales, it's also, there's a type of sampling you can do that's for developing a food product and getting feedback on your recipe. So we'll put the link to that in the chat and we'll send it out afterwards. It's a great resource both for you to learn about food safety and doing samples safely, but also something you can give your vendors so that they know how to do food sampling safely, and so that maybe they could do like a, get feedback on what their recipes are and improve their product if they want to. So next slide. Okay. We're going to do a really quick poll first. I'm curious to see where you guys are with how you're feeling about like licenses and permits. So I'll let Madeline set that up. So the question is, a potential new vendor who makes salsa comes to you about selling at farmers markets, and they want to know if they need any permits or if they need to use a commercial kitchen in order to sell their salsa at markets. Would you know what to tell them? So take a minute to read those answers and pick the closest one for you. Madeline, do the answers pop up or how do we see? Okay.
Yeah, can you see them, or it might just be that I'm the only one who has access to them?
It might be just you, so you might need to tell us, or I'm not.
Yeah.
You might
Okay,
have to
looks like
close the
most
poll.
people have answered. And Amanda, I don't know, you might be useless today. I'm just kidding. 38% of people said they're totally confident advising a vendor. 31% said they don't know for sure, but they think they know where to get more info. 21% said, I don't have a clue and I'm worried I'll say something incorrect. And 10% are board members glad that they don't have to handle this.
Excellent. Well, that's great. I'm glad it sounds like we will be able to help. Oh, there's the answers. So cool. Thank you, Madeline. Great. Well, I think we'll still have stuff for everyone to learn, and we'll definitely make it easier for you to know who the right people are to contact. Okay, let's see, next slide. Okay, now I'm going to move into a little bit about licensing that affects vendors. We know there's a lot of rules, regulations, and licenses that can apply to this, and it's an area that I hear a lot of farmers market managers stress about. They say some of them have said that they don't know what all the permits are. They get confused about who issues them. They don't understand the process of how vendors get permits or how to find out if a vendor has the permits that are needed. And they worry about giving vendors the wrong info and what the possible implications are for the market or vendor if they don't have those permits lined up. In the short time we have today, I hope to leave you guys with an understanding of your role in this area. Basically, it's that you don't actually have to be a permits expert. That's the work of the agencies that create them. Your role as a market manager is to understand the system well enough that you can navigate around and within it to get info for your market and for your vendors. I think a market manager is doing great when your answer on that poll was basically being able to say that you don't know something for sure about a permit question, but you know where to go to get help. So one thing, if you've been doing this for a while, you may have seen lists of permits vendors need that are organized by product. Like, here's what an egg vendor needs, or here's what plant nurseries need. Here's what a vendor making food from ingredients that they bought needs versus a farm making the same product, both ingredients that they grow. That list can get really long and hard to remember. What helped me as a market manager was realizing that while there were a lot of products on those lists, there were really only 3 places requiring permits, and that was tons easier to remember. So today we're going to hear from those 3 places and introduce you to which vendors they work with. That's all you really have to know. So there's the Oregon Department of Agriculture, there's your county health department, and then there's OLCC. Oregon Department of Agriculture, they work with the farms, all kinds, produce, meat, dairy. They also do shellfish, and they do processed foods, which means food products made from ingredients that the person has bought that are intended to be consumed off the market site. The other place that permits come from are the county health departments, and their vendor types are restaurants, food carts, ready-to-eat foods, any vendor basically selling food that are prepared on site and meant to be consumed at the market. And then there's OLCC, they do wines, cider, spirits, beer, stuff like that. Next slide. Yeah, okay. So The one thing that is going to be complicated is that bakeries can be tricky. Generally, this is Oregon Department of Agriculture, since it's a processed food meant to be consumed off-site. So I would start there. But a lot of times bakeries will be doing a bunch of added food prep on site. For instance, taking the bread that they made and turning it into sandwiches. They might do that on site. So this might cross into the ready to eat food carts arena. And you might want to check with your county health department also. But lastly, it's possible that the bakery vendor is exempt from needing any kind of permit at all. Oregon's home baking bill allows people to produce certain types of baked goods and candy items in their home kitchens and sell them directly to consumers without getting a license. It's really limited scope of products though, and a lot of items don't count. I've noticed, yeah, sometimes a bakery vendor may start with this, but then a couple years later, they've really expanded their product line and they really don't fall under this anymore. So it's a thing that, yeah, you need to keep a watch on. But fortunately, there's a really excellent guide to this from OSU Extension, and it can walk you through it. We'll put a link to that in the chat, and we'll also include it in the materials we send you afterwards. Okay. And then lastly, I just want to show how I used to handle questions like the one in the poll. If a potential vendor asks, if a potential vendor asks about selling salsa, like the thing I would do is find out, are they a farm or are they buying ingredients? Either way, it's ODA, but that info is important for the rules that apply to them. And then I would call or email ODA and say, hey, I'm a market manager and I want to understand what type of permits a potential vendor of mine should have. And I should point out, you don't need to name who the vendor is. This isn't about outing the vendor. This is just about you getting more information for yourself to understand how these things work. And so you could say, they're selling salsa, they're making from ingredients that they bought, and they want to use their home kitchen. Like, what type of permit do they need? And can they make this product at home? Or maybe it's a case where it's a farm that's making salsa from ingredients that they grow, and they want to use their home kitchen. How does that work? Once you have the answer from ODA, you can go back to your vendor and say, here's what I learned. Here's how you can get help from ODA. Here's what you can tell ODA to help you get like the fastest help possible. And depending on the level of help that you think this vendor needs, you can offer additional things like introducing the vendor over email to that staff person if they might have a hard time getting to the right person, or you can even I have done a three-way call before with a vendor and ODA because they wanted a little extra help. So that's what I see the market manager's role is. Okay, so let's hear from our presenters. First, we're going to hear from Rusty Rock. He works for the Oregon Department of Agriculture and is the interim program director for the Food Safety Division.
Okay, so just setting up the sharing. Hopefully that is working for everyone. Very good. So quick splash screen. So again, yeah, Rusty Rock. I'm the interim director for the Food Safety Animal Health Program. I was an inspector for 12 years prior to moving over into the management side. So I have pretty good background on farmers markets. I was out in the Pendleton area, covered about 7 counties that way. So kind of a really quick high-level view. What does ODA's food safety program do and what we don't do? That's something that we end up with a lot of questions about. So we will license the food establishments, and Amanda gave a really good summary of the types of food establishments. We do free consultative work. So if you send a vendor to us, we're not charging them until we get to the point where we're actually going to license them. And we're really, our intent is always educational. So we're trying to teach folks what it is they need to do to keep the product safe and to make product safely and meeting sanitary requirements. And then we can assist with label regulation compliance. And primarily when we're doing our consultative and label assistance, we're really trying to focus our energy on folks that are going to become licensed. We do spend a bit of time helping folks that are trying to operate under the various exemptions. either the Farm Direct or the bakery exemption. But we, struggle with the workload that we have. So trying to work outside of the box to help people that aren't intending to actually get licensed, we try to limit that amount of work that we do. But fundamentally, we're a public health agency, so we do our best to help. What things that we don't do is we don't do land use or zoning. We get those questions all the time where somebody wants to put a bakery in their garage at their home, and that gets complicated. And we encourage folks to reach out to their city or county or whoever is in charge of that residential zoning and verify that that works. Because our licenses don't overrule anybody. So, our licenses basically say that it's safe to make food at at the location, the products that we've licensed, but we don't, just because we're the state doesn't mean we can tell the city, we have to allow a bakery to happen at that location. It just doesn't work that way. We also cannot create processing plans or building plans. In a lot of cases, people come to us and say, well, I want to make this product. How do I do it? And we try to stay out of that. We can tell them, well, you might want to look at what thermal processes or whatever is appropriate for the product they're talking about. We're not going to tell the vendors, how to make the salsa. We really, they need to have that on their own. And we surprisingly run into that a lot. And we don't approve labels, even though we'll help with label development. We won't do the work on, layouts and things like that. We can talk about the individual elements that need to be on the label, the ingredients, the weight, the address information. But if we're given bad information, we can only comment on the information that we're given. So that's kind of where we draw. We can't say formally that a label is approved, just that it complies. One of the questions that I think is really important for market managers especially is when you do want to do some work to check to see if a vendor has their permit, you can go to the ODA website. And so there's that slash on the screen. It's a short link, so it's pretty easy to put down, oda.direct/food safety. And if you go there, there's a spot on the website that says there's a license lookup, and you can type in the name of the vendor and find out if they have a license. If you have a vendor that needs to get the license, again, I would reiterate, it's free up until they get their license. So making those phone calls, having the conversations, discussing their site and what would be needed to become licensed. We don't charge for any of that stuff until we get to the point where we say, yes, you are approved to be licensed to make the products that you've listed with us. Then we would talk about what the license fee would be. But to me, it's a pretty low overhead process for vendors to have those conversations. And, we're not out playing gotcha saying, oh, well, now that you've contacted us, you're fair game and we're gonna, try to close you down. Our goal really is to help people bring their products to market. If there is no food manufacturing going on, then we don't have a job to do. So, and we also like to eat. So it's important that we keep that system moving. So the best way to reach ODA to get those resources, and we're happy to talk with market managers anytime. I kind of have broken out the contact information into what you would give to market managers versus what you would provide to vendors. Because as market managers, you may be in an area that has multiple food safety inspectors that are assigned to the area that you're in. Like if you're in Multnomah County, we've got, 7 inspectors in that area. If you're in Umatilla County, then I can tell you, you're going to be talking with Melissa, but because she's covering 7 different counties out there, and it's pretty straightforward. But the phone number that's on the screen, the 986-4720, that's our main line in Salem. And then just talk with them about what your questions are, and they can redirect you to the right inspector. Or you can email foodsafety@oda.oregon.gov, and that will reach one of our 2 office specialists that can help redirect you to the right people. And then the long link that's on there on the screen now, that really is the direct link to the lookup, where you can click on that and type in the name of the vendor, and it'll tell you if they're currently licensed or not. The one thing I would say is that our license cycle is a little bit frustrating for some vendors because it goes from July 1st to June 30th. So if somebody wanted to get licensed right now to make that salsa, we would give them the license, but they would have to pay the full rate right now, and then they would have to pay it again at the end of June, because that license would expire June 30th. So they may potentially have to pay for the license twice. But it's an annual license, but it's just, we're not on a calendar cycle. We're on a fiscal calendar that's July 1st to June 30th. And then lastly on this page is the link that I would give to vendors so that they can type in their specifics. You plug in your zip code and it'll tell you exactly who to contact based on the products that you're making. Because different license or different activities may have different inspectors. If you're a dairy processor, you would have a different inspector than if you're making salsa, for example. I'll keep going back to salsa. And then here is a recap. It's got my contact information, our admin contact, and then our website on this last screen. And then I guess in closing, I did want to address one thing. You talked a little bit about sampling, and sampling has been a little bit of a hot button issue for us lately. And I fully agree with what you were saying about we don't require licenses or permits to do sampling. But what I would caveat that with is you do need to look at the source of the product that they are sampling. What we've run into, the food that they're sampling really needs to still be from an approved source. So if I'm going to make, a beer in my bathtub at home, I can't just offer it on street corners and say it's sampling. Even though it's marketing, sampling is essentially selling. It's just the quantity is underneath the level that we require a license, but it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be a safe product. If somebody is sampling something that is unsafe or requires a license at any level, then we would talk about how that food is being manufactured. The big example we've been running into lately has been raw milk. We've run into a lot of folks that want to go to farmers markets and market their herd share, and herd shares are a legal and legitimate way to sell raw milk by offering ownership of the animal, and then you're actually getting the milk from your animal. But one of the limitations on herd shares is that product has to go directly back to the folks that own the herd shares. So when you start sampling milk that came from a herd share, that's actually illegal because you're providing the milk back to somebody who is not a participant in the herd share. And so they would have to pasteurize that milk and have it come from a licensed source. The same would go with meat. If you wanted to sample, you're trying to sell locker beef, which is custom processed. Custom also is required to go back to the consumer or the person who owns the animal. So you can't sample that custom beef because that would be a violation of USDA rules and also Oregon statutes. So sampling is a little bit, you have to watch it a little bit just to make sure that what they're doing is actually, or what they're sampling is a licensed food item or under one of the exemptions. It's fine to sample exempt product as well, but exemptions are a pretty narrow area. Okay, I think I've taken up my full 10 minutes. So I will stop here and then wait for questions.
Thanks, Rusty. Yeah, we're going to do the Q&A at the end of all three presenters. We're going to have Sombra Forrest go next. She's the lead environmental health specialist at Multnomah County Health Department. She works in the temporary restaurant program. Sombra is who markets or vendors in Multnomah County would contact. So just to note that when we get into this area, this is more county related. So if you're not in Multnomah, you'll need to find your county's health department and their temporary restaurant program. But Sombra's here to a lot of the rules are the same among the counties. So Sombra is here to represent generally what happens. So thank you, Sombra.
Hello, my name is Sombra, yes, Forrest, and I am the lead inspector for the temporary restaurant program for Multnomah County in Portland and surrounding the area. You know, it's not just Portland, but you know, areas around Portland, that's still Multnomah County. And I've been with the county since 2006. 2007, I took over the lead position for the temporary restaurant program. So I've been doing it for quite a number of years. And I've had, you know, over that time, good relationships with food vendors and market managers. And it's been a really positive experience. I was asked to answer a series of questions that Amanda would like you all to know. And so I'm just going to begin. I don't have slides, so bear with me. So what do county health departments do? Well, county health departments ensure food consumption and food handling practices are safe for the public. We inspect food intended for immediate consumption. County health departments are mandated by the state to perform statutory inspections biannually for brick and mortar restaurants, mobile food carts, and once at the beginning of temporary food events and when temporary licenses renew for the same event. County health departments also ensure food safety compliance with the FDA Food Code, a national guideline that provides local, state, and tribal and federal food control agencies scientific food safety information that follows national food regulatory policies. We do a number of other types of inspections as well. We inspect pools, spas, and motels, travel lodges, public school kitchens, vending machines, all things, and a number of others. You know, we don't have to go into everything, but we do a number of inspections and we stay very busy. We have over 3,000 food facilities alone that we inspect every 6 months. So what is the process of getting a temporary restaurant license for food vendors operating at farmers markets? In Multnomah County, food vendors submit a temporary event restaurant license application in advance of operating their food booth. Two types of licenses are available. We call a single event 30-day and a seasonal 90-day license is what they're called. The 90-day license requires a plan review application to be submitted and approved in advance of operating under that 90-day seasonal license. That seems to be the preferred license that vendors get for farmers markets since they are seasonal and go for more than 30 days. Food vendors are required to renew their license every 30 or 90 days, and they will receive an inspection at the beginning of that event and when their license renews. We have office staff that can, and myself, including that can answer licensing questions, and I am available by phone to answer any questions regarding food safety, excuse me, food safety or booth setup. So next question is, how to check if a vendor has a license, and what we do as the inspectors when we go out to the farmers markets. And we want to ensure everyone has a current food license and they're operating within the guidance of food safety. And so what we do to check the vendor has a license, we can physically see it posted in their food booth because it's required that they post it in view of, you know, the public. And we can check for a current license. You know, when we're out there, we keep our iPads with us and we can check just on the spot in our database to see if they have a current license. And we can also call our office staff, and they are a good resource for us to answer any of those licensing questions we have in the field. And then what resources can market managers expect from their county health department? Market managers can expect us to ensure food vendors are licensed and their food operation is inspected to ensure that the food they are serving is safe for public consumption. Market managers can use the county health department to receive guidance by speaking directly with their health inspector by phone or in person. They may Also visit our website for guidance on how a food vendor may apply for a license or guiding a food vendor to us for licensing. Amanda will give information on how to contact us via email for me, phone, and our website. And then how do you reach the right person to get that information? Again, market managers can call our office or speak to me as a lead inspector for temporary events. I do get calls sometimes about just food safety questions or whether a vendor needs a license. I always let them know to just guide them to us, and we can discuss, because there's so many ins and outs about licensing and whether they would need one or not, as you can have heard from the different agencies with Amanda. And so is there differences between counties? Not really. We're all mandated by the state, statutes within Oregon to do basically the same thing as to inspect and ensure licensing for food vendors. So the Oregon Health Authority oversees the counties, and their guidance ensures regulation and enforcement of food safety rules, making sure rules are followed at the county level. Oregon Health Authority has recently adopted changes, though, to the food exemption list for temporary restaurants. And part of that is called food exemption agreement we have with food vendors, being that they expanded that exemption list for temporary food vendors. They do have to follow just a handful of guidelines and requirements to be an exempt vendor for certain foods. And that is another guidance document that I gave to Amanda to share with the market managers, so they're aware of those foods. And so where are we at for time? Am I talking too fast? 4 minutes? Okay, great. Okay. And I wanted to add in a couple things listening to the other speakers about sampling. And again, we do, as Rusty was saying, and Amanda, we don't license samples. However, we do have some requirements around it. If the sample is over 3 ounces, we do license it. So again, if there's, like say apple cider or something, they're wanting to serve in a cup, and they want to do a whole, 4 8-ounce cup, then they would need to get a license with less if it's for immediate consumption and it's food we license. And it does have to be for promotional purposes, so that the intention is that they have a retail food that they're promoting, and they want to show, just give have someone tasting the food and to show, the different elements of the food and by sampling it. And shoot. I had something else to add, but I'll remember it when we get to our Q&A. So I guess I have 3 minutes left. Again, being an inspector, going to the markets, it's really a fun thing to do, because we get to see how all the different vendors, what they're serving, and we get to talk with them, and we're often probably the only regulatory person that comes out to inspect on the weekends like that. And so we do get to know a lot of the vendors and the market managers, and it's been years. We've every year seems to have a new farmers market pop up, and it's been very positive and fun experience for us. So we enjoy it.
Thank you, Sandra. It's great to hear that I like hearing about you visiting the markets and how much work, just like market managers, you are out there on weekends and at odd times out in the field doing that kind of stuff too.
Yes.
So next we're going to go into OLCC. I just want to check, is Jesse Comer here? Okay, sounds like he's not here. Sorry, we were going to have a representative from OLCC here today, but he wasn't able to make it, so I'm going to fill in. Let me wait. I'll wait for Madeline. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so I'm going to be covering the types of licenses an alcohol vendor needs for having a booth at your market where they're selling bottles to be taken home. Markets that are wanting the ability to serve drinks on site is a much more complicated situation and is kind of beyond the aim of today's workshop. But if you're interested in having something like a wine garden or a beer garden or people being able to order drinks at your market, I can definitely connect you with another market that does this so you could learn about their experience, and I can help you get in touch with OLCC to talk about all the licensing and the protocol that's involved in putting something like that together. So again, this is more just for what a vendor needs to be able to sell their product so that somebody could take it home. So to start with, all alcohol businesses need to have an annual license, which gives them permission to operate a business making, selling, or serving alcohol. In addition, OLCC service permits, those are like, the ones that like bartenders and stuff have, are needed by your vendor and any employees that they'll have at market. Once a business has their annual license to be able to sell at a farmer's market, they also need to apply for a special event license. These special event licenses cover only 5 dates at a time, and they're good for only one location. So a vendor will need to obtain multiple licenses multiple times a season, depending on how many farmers markets they participate in and how many dates they do. The license application also needs to be submitted to the OLCC office for the location the farmers market is in. So the vendor may need to work with different OLCC offices as well. And there's 5 offices that cover the state's 36, to cover all the counties. And each of these licenses costs about $10 per market day. Every special event license application also needs to be approved by the city or county government the farmer's market is located in before it can be submitted to OLCC and the license granted. The government office or personnel that handles this is different depending on the individual city or county. And so vendors are going to need to call or email the city or county like general info line to find out and track down which office handles that. Another thing that they can do is check with similar vendors that they're friends with, because there are other vendors probably know the answer and can give them a tip on who to talk to. So if you're wanting to confirm that your vendor is licensed, you should ask them to give you a copy of their special event license. If they have a special event license, you can assume that they also have an annual license and their service permits, because OLCC wouldn't give them an event license if they didn't have those in the first place. And since special event licenses require the vendor to know exactly what days they'll be at your farmer's market, that's why your alcohol vendors may be kind of like on you to be like, what is my schedule? When am I going to be there? Please confirm my dates. That's the part that they need from you. And then you should also not expect vendors when they are applying to you to already have this special event license, because they can't get it until they know what your dates are. These special event licenses sound really complicated, and I think they are. There's a lot of steps to get them. However, my experience with alcohol vendors has been that they're pretty skilled in handling this. At least the ones I've worked with tend to even have someone on staff that handles but this is pretty much their job. So to get all these licenses and arrange them. So they're pretty good at getting this done, and that they haven't needed a lot of coaching or support as a market manager, other than getting those dates confirmed so that they can actually get you their license ready to go for the season. So that is what I have for OLCC. Sorry they couldn't be here in person to meet you, but now I think we can go into our Q&A time.
Yeah, and we're nice and ahead of schedule too. So you guys, there's a few questions in the chat too, but also feel free to just come off of mute, ask your question with the panel, and do be mindful to share your time. And so if you can keep your questions a little bit brief, that would be great.
Do we want to start with Madeline asking one of the questions that are in the chat?
Sure. So we had one quick question from Era, who asked, with the herd share, just clarifying, the vendor can only sell the raw milk to folks that have a herd share with the farm. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Herd shares, if they're operating at your farmer's market, should not be selling anything. Herd share, all they can do is sign people up for memberships. If you do allow them to be a drop point, point of distribution, then they should be having products there that are for specific individuals, and they shouldn't be exchanging any money for food products or sampling.
Got it. Thank you. Bill, I noticed you had two questions. Do you want to hop off mute and ask them?
Okay, I'm on muted. Well, the first question was earlier when we were talking about the license of 90-day license. And I noticed that most counties just kind of piggyback on each other and follow the same rules. It's just, this is it. I'm going to have a 60, 90-day license or whatever, 30-day license. But most events, as mentioned earlier, are a little longer than that during the season, especially a farmer's market. I'm just wondering if they ever considered a 120-day license, and what would it take to change that criteria to create such a thing? And that was one question. Then the other one was simply, has COVID affected their inspections when they're going out there, and how has that changed? And that was my two questions.
Want me to answer that?
Yeah.
So thank you for those questions. Those are great questions. So have we, has the state, so the state oversees the program. So if you can imagine, we only used to have 30-day licenses only. And so, it took people contacting the state Oregon Health Authority and asking about why isn't there a 90-day or a license that's longer for these seasonal events. And so they came up with this 90-day license. Will there be 100-day, 120-day licenses? Maybe in the future. I can't even answer that. It's something that the state then has to put in. It has to be a state statute for it to, to be legal to change it. But they, had a 90-day license. So maybe someday there'll be a 120-day license for say temporary food vendors. For immediate consumption, I can only speak with that. So, again, it takes contacting them and letting them know, this is something that food vendors are interested in, and is there something, will they, maybe change that someday. It won't come from us as the county, because again, they oversee our program, and we our job is to regulate and to enforce. So the other question is about of COVID. At the beginning of COVID, we spoke with the, again, Oregon Health Authority and with the mandate with the governor's office, and spoke with the county, with the market managers, and they gave us guidelines that they were following as per the state guidelines with COVID, and and everybody was sort of on the same page as far as how they were going to handle all the safety protocols for say masks, 6-foot distancing, sanitizing, disinfection, and enforcement of that. So, And, we were told as inspectors just to ensure when we go out to do inspection that people are wearing their masks and that, the signage is there, and that the coordinators and the market managers were aware of those guidelines and that they're actually are following them in real time. So did that answer your question about COVID?
Yeah, fine. Good.
Okay.
All right, we have a bunch of awesome questions, so I think I'm just going to read them to keep everything streamlined. So Tamara asked, where would fishing or foraging fit into the question of required permits or licenses? And then kind of related to that, Shiny asked an awesome question, is there a guide or overview for native fishing activity at the farmers markets?
So those are two pretty distinctly separate areas. One, I can address the fishing. So fishing would have to occur under some sort of permit. You can't sell sports caught fish. So if you're just out fishing, you can't sell those fish. You would have to, anybody who's going to be selling fish needs to have an appropriate license from the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. And if it's just a fish that's been head and gutted, which is the euphemistic term for just a general cleaning, that is a raw agricultural commodity from the standpoint of the Department of Agriculture. So if you've got fish that are H&G'd and they came from a licensed source, so from ODF&W, then they could sell that fish. They couldn't do any processing activities. So say they would like to fillet them at your farmer's market, that would require specific licensing. If you go beyond removing the head and guts to start skinning them or filleting them, then a license is required. And that same, and there isn't a guide, as Shani had talked about, that we're still working on the details of how the interaction with the tribes would go. It's a pretty complex system because it involves federal agencies as well. And the tribes are independent nation, so we have to respect their rights. So if it comes from a tribal member and they're just selling fish H&G'd again, then that's also an approved source for selling the fish. If they're going to fillet them on your farmer's market ground that is not on within the boundaries of the tribal nation, then they would still need a license even though they're tribal members, because processing off of tribal grounds would fall under state responsibilities. And then to circle back to foraging, if you're talking about collecting mushrooms or vegetables from the wild, that is it's a raw agricultural commodity. As long as it's a raw commodity, then there's no restrictions on the sales of raw agricultural commodities. If you start talking about dehydrating, slicing, curing, anything like that of foraged materials, that would require a license. There is no exemption that applies to foraged processed foods. The only exemption related to processed foods is things that you farm yourself.
Great, thank you. All right, we have a couple more, so I'm going to try and speed through them. Is OFMA going to stay on top of all the current changes on the website that are going to be made relating to COVID, of what we can or cannot do in our markets?
I would say yes, we will keeping up with those details and adding them to the website as needed when things change. Yes.
Thanks, Amanda. Okay, next is from Penny. Does a farm need a different permit to cook the vegetables on site to sample?
So I'm not sure that, from the Department of Agriculture's perspective, I think that would be a temp event license. That would be my guess. So I'll leave that one to Sombra.
Thank you. Yes. So again, we've had vendors that there were produce vendors that would like to then move into the area of immediate consumption. And yes, if they're maybe wanting to sample, that goes back to, if it's 3 ounces or less and they're sampling their produce, we would work with them and not have a license, but still have, the safety guidelines in place for hand washing and things like that. But if it's more than 3 ounces, yes, a temporary restaurant license is then required. And then they would follow the requirements for that license. And the market manager would guide them to the local health department to get that ball rolling.
Thank you, Sambra. Next one from Janelle. If a vendor has a membership club that pays in advance, then picks their purchase up at the market, how does that impact licensing?
Janelle, are you talking about like a CSA? I'm not sure what you mean by that.
So that may be a question that's circling back to herd shares. And even like you were saying, CSAs and some of those other. So if there's no commerce happening, then we don't look at it as sales. But the question I can't answer that was probably more in your court, Amanda, is how does that affect the liability? If your herd share is distributing products from the farmer's market, does that create a liability for you, your market? I don't know. That's something you guys would have to look into. But if there's no commerce, if somebody's just coming to a location to pick something up that is under an exemption of some sort, then we wouldn't look at that as needing any licensable requirements.
All right. If there's no further clarification on that, we can move on to the next question from Megan. Can someone give an overview of what the HACCP is and how that fits into vendor licensing?
Yeah, so HACCP is hazard analysis of critical control points. And that's going to get into the weeds pretty quick. It's a food safety program related to some very narrow product ranges. We don't generally require HACCP for licensing, except for with like juice and some other very specific products. There are food safety programs that some vendors would have to meet to get their license, but that would be on a one-off basis, depending on what the products are. So definitely have your vendor reach out, but you wouldn't be asking for them to provide you with a HACCP plan as the farmer's market. Just having their license should do the trick.
Great, thank you, Rusty. I have one more question, and then if anyone needs clarification, they can hop off mute and ask themselves. This one's from Becky. What is the legality of a farm direct producer selling or consigning another farm's value-added product?
So the farm direct bill did allow for some consigning. I'm trying to remember if that extends to value added, and I think it does. No, I think value added you have to sell direct to the end consumer. It's consignment, if I recall, and I would have to do some research, so I should probably look into it before babbling on, but I know that you can, for raw agricultural commodities, consign them to other vendors, but they have to be they also have to be a farm direct grower, and you have to do it within an adjacent county. I know there's some restrictions in there, but there's a handout that's available on our website that details that very clearly.
Awesome. We have 3 more minutes. If anyone else wants to hop off mute, ask a question or clarification.
I did see the question that was from Bill, and I'm not going to be able to answer it, but he stated Senator Betsy Johnson sponsored a bill that allowed selling at farmers markets, but market managers are not always aware of how this could be implemented. Is that a bill that's currently in session? I haven't seen anything come out of that yet. You have to remember.
No, this is Bill.
Sure.
this was many years ago, and it was passed, and it was taken care of. And it just never, most people don't implement it. Most people are not aware of it, and they're not sure how to do it. So I think might be a clear clarification of that on the website somewhere for people that have questions, because we get asked about that from time to time at our market. But, you know, if a person goes out and they catch the fish, basically they can bring it to the market and sell the fish. So I just think that there needs to be more clarification on that. That's what the question was really about.
Yep, I'll have to do some research on that. I haven't heard of that being a legal activity.
Okay, we have one more minute left, and you know what a great occasion to have an extra minute of stretching. So we're going to take a quick short break. Everyone can kind of get off their screens, stretch, relax, and then we'll see you back here at about 10 to 11. So at about 10:50, and we'll see you on the other side.
Okay, if anybody wants follow up to any questions, please email me and I would be happy to respond back, and I can copy off on my responses as well, so you can update an FAQ or anything like that. So, but I'm gonna have to jump off because my computer's
Yeah.
going now.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Rusty and Samra. Great to see you.
You're very welcome. And again, I'm an easy person to contact as well. And I will give Amanda, my phone number that, now that we're all
And that we're recording again. Thanks, Madeline. So welcome back. We are going to get into the rest of the agenda with our fantastic presenters as well. And Amanda is going to be back to give us an overview of all these food access programs, rundown other supporting resources available from OFMA. And I'm just going to pass it back to Amanda, mute myself, and sit back and listen.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to do a quick rundown of how SNAP works in Oregon at farmers markets, since your first 2 days in boot camp are they're a little more Washington focused, and I just want to cover it from Oregon perspective. A lot of the notes that I'm going to be going over here are available in OFMA's SNAP and EBT Toolkit that's online at our website as well. So from the very basics here, SNAP stands for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It's a federal food assistance program administered by the USDA's Food and Nutrition Service. And it provides crucial financial support to households experiencing food insecurity so that they have more to eat. SNAP funds are loaded onto an electronic benefits transfer card. That's the EBT card, which can be used like a credit or debit card. And each state has its own EBT card design. And in Oregon, EBT cards are also called Oregon Trail cards. However, your market can accept cards from all states, though, not just Oregon. Next slide. So here's how a SNAP transaction works at how they typically work at a farmer's market. So usually what happens is that a customer comes to the info booth or other central location, and the person that helps them should be in the role of staff or as a really well-trained and trusted volunteer. Running SNAP sales is not something you can expect a volunteer to come learn on the spot in the morning. It should be someone that's really knows what they're doing. So customers bring their EBT card to the info booth before they shop, and they tell the market representative how much they want to spend. And then the market assists the customer by ringing up the sale and swiping their EBT card, and the customer enters their confidential PIN number. When approved, the market gives the customer tokens for the amount of the sale. Almost always at markets, EBT tokens are distributed in $1 amounts, which offers the most flexibility for customers in how and where they use the tokens, since cash change is not allowed per federal SNAP regulations. Once the sales transaction has been completed, the customer's funds from their EBT card are directly deposited into the market's bank account, along with all the other transactions of that day, usually in one batch, typically within 48 hours of when the market happened. Anyway, that is like behind the scenes in the internet ether. What's happening next on market site is that the customer uses the tokens to buy products from market vendors. The tokens can be spent all in one day or saved for another time. The tokens don't expire. You should not have tokens that expire. Anyway, this means it's never one-to-one each day how many tokens you sell and how many are spent with the vendors and how many the vendors turn in. So this is where really careful tracking of what goes out and what comes in is required so that your market knows the total amount of tokens that are out in the world and that you are liable for. After the customer spends the tokens are now with the vendor. And at the end of the day, the vendors turn in the tokens to the market for reimbursement. The market counts the tokens received from vendors and provides a reimbursement according to the market's reimbursement protocol. And some markets do reimbursements on the spot. Most collect the tokens and later do counting off-site, and then they issue a weekly or monthly check to vendors. Okay, so some of you are here as new markets and are new to running a SNAP program or don't have your SNAP program set up yet. And others are new staff or board members at a market that's been around for a while and already has a program in place. So for the first group, those without SNAP programs, I just want to give you a basic process of how you get started with having SNAP at your market. And then I'll have some more of like the maintenance stuff to say to the people who are coming into a program that already exists. So for the first group, you'll need to apply to FNS to become an authorized SNAP retailer and get your FNS number. This application is online and it can be a little daunting if you've never seen one before, but there's lots of help out there. I can help you. The staff at MarketLink can help. OFMA has guides at our website on how to do it, including a workshop recording from last year when we had an FNS staff person walk through the application online and how to fill out all the forms. After you get that application in, the next thing is deciding what point of sale system you want to use. And again, I can help you with this. I'll probably get you over to MarketLink because of their funding program that helps with costs. But yeah, there's help out there to help you figure out what technology you want to use. Then you'll need to buy a set of tokens to use and determine the bookkeeping methods you want to use for accounting and processing reimbursements to your vendors. And after that, you'll create training tools for your staff, volunteers, and vendors to let them know how SNAP works, what foods are eligible, and how to turn in tokens. The info is really similar for each of these audiences, but it also needs to be customized for their specific roles and responsibilities. And then finally, you need to make sure your community knows they can use SNAP tokens at your market. All your materials, electronic, and paper should at the very least include the simple verbiage that you accept EBT. You see signs like this even at gas stations, and your market needs to do the same thing. Okay, so then for that second group, people who already have SNAP programs, but you might be new to running one yourself. I think the important thing to know is that SNAP EBT it's an ongoing operation with financial and labor investments. You should take your staffing and bookkeeping system seriously to make sure that the back end of your SNAP program doesn't get messy. You want to really keep track of that accounting. And during market hours, you'll need to plan to have enough staff or volunteers that one of them can be occupied with selling tokens all day. And so they're not available to help with other work around the market. Outreach and advertising is also continuous. A lot of people don't know that farmers markets accept SNAP, and telling people that that happens and how to do it, and making your market comfortable and a good place to want to use your SNAP benefits is an ongoing investment in your market, and making sure that everybody can come to it. Let's see. And then depending on how your market does budget planning, it may be your job as a market manager to come up with a figure for what it costs to run the program for the season. And funds need to be found through grant writing, sponsorships, possibly vendor fees, to make sure that you can keep offering SNAP at your market. I think the other thing to do is to make sure that you know how to offer paper vouchers. If you had to do it in an emergency. You'd only need to be able to do this if there was some kind of snafu at your market with the EBT machine, or if you did something like forget to bring the EBT machine to market one day. Has happened. But it'll save you so much stress if you know beforehand how to do paper vouchers. OFMA has a checklist guide of how this process works. It's on our website. And a template of vouchers that you can use should that happen. And of course, you want to have having some of those printed out beforehand and stashed somewhere on site or with your EBT kit is a good idea. Another thing to know, if you've already got an ongoing program, is to be aware that FNS requires all SNAP retailers to do a reauthorization every 5 years. It's similar to the application and basically is just updating all your market's info as needed. With market turnover of staff and board members, it's possible you'll get one of these, but not have anyone currently involved in the market who is there when you set up your program. And so you may need to update all the contact info, and you may not have anyone to show you what to do because everyone who set up this program is not there anymore. But I can help you with this. I've filled out a bunch of these reauthorization forms. They're no sweat. And basically, yeah, if you're having trouble with your SNAP programs, just check with me and I will find you the resources, or I'll get you to the right person. So now we're going to hear from 3 more people who can help you with food access stuff at your market. And we're going to start with Lisa Roach, who works for MarketLink, which is a program of the National Association of Farmers Market Nutrition Programs. She's our regional representative for the West Coast, and she's going to talk about a way to get SNAP equipment and also assistance with FNS applications and things like that. So Lisa, let's hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda. So yeah, my name is Lisa and I'm a regional representative with MarketLink. Thank you again to Amanda and the Oregon Farmers Market Association for hosting me and letting me talk more about our program. So I'm excited to share more about MarketLink, which is a program, like Amanda mentioned, that helps specifically farms and farmers markets with becoming SNAP authorized retailers and connecting them to grant funded card reader equipment. So just a quick background about MarketLink. We are a program of the National Association of Farmers Market Nutrition Programs that was awarded a grant from the USDA in 2019 to help farms and farmers markets accept DBT. We are partnered with a company called Novadia Group that developed an app called Total Pay Go, which is used in conjunction with the free card reader equipment to process SNAP EBT payments. And you can go to the next slide. So just to give a quick overview of the basic steps of the MarketLink program, I will go into more details about each of these, but this is just an overview. So the first step is to fill out our eligibility assessment on our website at marketlink.org/apply. The form only takes a couple of minutes and gets you connected to one of our regional representatives, which in this case would be me because I am the West Coast representative. And I'll talk more about what eligibility means in the next slide. Step 2 is to become SNAP authorized with the USDA if you are not already. So you can do this on your own with our guidance, and we could even submit the application on your behalf. I'll go more into details about that in a little bit too. If you are eligible for our grant, then step 3 is to get set up with a SNAP processing account from Total Pay Go. And then step 4 is you receive your card reader and you are ready to go. You can go to the next slide. So like I mentioned, the first step is to fill out the eligibility assessment. And this will determine if you are eligible for the free equipment. I probably don't need to go too much into this because I'm pretty confident that everyone here meets the definition of a farmer's market. But the main takeaway here is that if you haven't received state-funded equipment that is still working, meet the definition of a farmer's market, and have not received funding from us before, then you are eligible. But if you're unsure, you can always contact us and we can help you determine your eligibility before you apply. All right, next slide. So this slide shows what is covered by our grant and how we can help you even if your market wasn't eligible. So regardless of if you are eligible for the free equipment, we can help you with the SNAP application, which I'll go more into in the next slide. If you are grant eligible, then you can receive the free card reader and 1-year subscription to Total Pay Go. But even if you're not eligible, we can still help guide you and present you with options that may work for your market. The third line there refers to the printer waiver, which is a waiver that we wrote into our grant that allows anyone using our equipment to provide text or emailed receipts. So this means you are not required to provide a printer receipt and won't need to buy a printer. If you aren't eligible for a grant, then you would need to provide a printer receipt. And then the last 2 points there basically just say we're here to help you with any other questions you have. SNAP technical assistance was written to our grant. So whether or not you are eligible or not, we're here to answer any questions you have. All right, next slide. So finally, the SNAP application. So as I mentioned, if you're not currently authorized for SNAP, we can help you in a few ways. The first way is to just support you if you want to submit it on your own. We have lots of instructional guides, or we can just be there to stand by, ask you if you have any questions, or we can even walk you through the application. The second way we help is to actually submit the application on your behalf. So as you can see by the slide, there's a lot of information and the process can be complicated. And like Amanda mentioned, it can be kind of daunting. So we highly recommend that you allow us to submit it on your behalf. But either way, these are the main basic steps. So step 1 is to apply through the USDA website. If you have MarketLink do it for you, you would just simply need to gather all your information and book an appointment with us. But if you'd like to do it on your own, then the first step is to make an account with the USDA and log into their website to access the application. But either way, for the application, you will need to identify a responsible official. So that's step 2. And generally for farmers markets, this will be the market manager or the owner, anyone operating in a place of authority. For nonprofits, this will typically be the executive director. But the person you choose needs to be someone with the legal authority to sign legal documents on behalf of the market. So that's a good overarching way to look at it. And then once the application is submitted, you need to submit some supporting documents. These will depend on, again, how your market is structured, but typically it's things like a photo ID, a copy of your social security card, any business licenses that you may have for your market. And again, if you're a nonprofit, then you would submit a 501c3 letter or other determination letter. But then once all those documents are uploaded, the USDA starts reviewing your application and you basically wait to hear back from them. Occasionally they will ask for additional information. So while you're waiting, you'll want to keep a close eye on your email. But this is one benefit of, again, us submitting it for you, is we can keep an eye on things for you and just reach out if something is needed. But then lastly, once you're approved, you get a copy of your permit in the mail, as well as a PDF copy in your email. All right, next slide. So once you're approved for SNAP, you will then need to get set up with a point of sale device to process payments. So this slide will talk about what equipment is provided through MarketLink. So through our grant, the first thing we cover is a 1-year subscription to an app called Total Pay Go. So that's what you're seeing on the screen there. You would download this app on either a phone or a tablet that you use for the market. You would then pair this app to the second piece we provide, the free Bluetooth card reader, and use the app to process payments and the card reader to swipe the cards. If you're familiar with Square, it's similar to that, just to give you an idea. Okay, next slide. So this means you'll need to provide your own smartphone or tablet to run the Total Pay Go app on. This can be your personal device or a device you already use for the market. It can be either an Android or an Apple device. Doesn't matter what carrier you use, as long as the device has Bluetooth capabilities, access to Wi-Fi or cellular data, then it should be good to go. So again, to summarize, MarketLink provides the card reader, and subscription to Total Pay Go, the market provides the device to download it on. All right, next page. So the first top part there reviews what we've talked about already of what you get with the MarketLink grant, the card reader, subscription to Total Pay Go, and the other thing I haven't got to yet is there are no transaction fees for SNAP EBT sales. So while you're using this app only to process SNAP, essentially for the first year, it's completely free. Total Pay Go does offer optional credit and debit processing if you'd like to add that. But unfortunately, I don't have time to get into that today, but at the end, I'll include my contact information. We can tell you more about that. But then what happens after the first year? So after the first year, if you want to continue using Total Pay Go, you would pay for the subscription at either $191 a year or $19.95 a month. So of course, if your market's open seasonally, it makes more sense to just do the monthly plan. But you would still get to hold on to the card reader, still get those no transaction fees, and you still get the printer waiver. So the idea is that you get a year to try out the program and see if it's going to work for you and build your customer base to justify paying for the subscription after the year is up. Okay, next slide. And this is just a quick slide to show what other options are available through Total Pay Go. In addition to the app, you can log on to your online portal and access all your sales data. So you'll be able to run reports of how much sales you did in a market day and export that data into Excel or QuickBooks or whatever accounting software you use. Okay, next page. So if I've convinced you in this short time, you can head to marketlink.org, marketlink.org/apply and fill out our short eligibility assessment and get connected to us to start the process. Okay, and next slide. And lastly, there's our contact information. Again, I've highlighted my contact there because I am the West Coast regional representative, so you can feel free to just email me directly too. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Lisa. We'll get into asking questions about MarketLink when we're going to do a Q&A at the end of everyone talking. So now I'm going to have Katie Furia come on. She's the outreach coordinator for WIC and Senior Farm Direct at the Oregon Health Authority, and she's helping to expand the use of Farm Direct checks in Oregon.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. Hi, everybody. Katie Furia here, and I am a big fan of farmers market, so happy to be here and talk to you about the Oregon Farm Direct Nutrition Program. Next slide, please. So we are a state-administered federal nutrition program. We get state and federal funding. If you were part of those Washington-led bootcamp sessions, you maybe heard about the Farmers Market Nutrition Program, which is federally what the program is called, but here in Oregon, we call it Farm Direct. You likely have also seen or heard about FDNP, which is our acronym, or more informally, green checks or WIC checks or senior checks. All of those are us, so it can make marketing a challenge a little bit, but that's all our program. And we issue these green checks you see on the screen to WIC families and Oregon seniors to spend on fresh produce directly with authorized farmers at farmers markets and farm stands. And those are eligible for use June 1st through November 30th each season. Next slide. A little bit more on our participants. So our participants for WIC are currently enrolled in the program, and they receive a $28 per person benefit, and that's for the season. So we just issue one, it's not a monthly benefit. And that's up to 5 people in the household who are enrolled can receive that $28 benefit. And that is different from their regular WIC benefits, which are only spent at grocery stores. For our seniors, a little bit more there about the eligibility, and their Farm Direct checks total $32, which is up from $24 from the past few seasons. So we're excited to get more dollars out there into the markets. And again, if there's more than one eligible senior in a household, they would each receive that $32 benefit. Next slide, please. So a little flow for what the program looks like start to finish. We do all of the issuance at the state level, so that's not happening by you or at your market. For WIC participants, those are all distributed through the local WIC clinics, either in person or by mail, and those get issued between May and September each season. And for our seniors, we do everything by the mail, so that's how they're getting their checks, and they should all have their checks in hand by the end of June. So once they have them, they go to a participating farmer's market or farm stand and spend their checks right with the farmer at the farmer booth. The farmer then takes the checks to their bank and deposits them like a regular check. So you as a market manager or staff are very possibly not even seeing these checks go through your markets unless somebody's coming up and asking a question about them. So pretty easy to have as part of your market since you're not really interacting with them a whole lot. And then of course, more fresh, healthy food is going home with our participants. So great for communities and farmers. Next slide, please. As far as the eligible foods, we have it printed right there on the checks for the participants. But the checks are good for locally grown, fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, and cut herbs. We don't allow anything processed, prepared, or potted. So pretty straight up fresh fruit, vegetables, and cut herbs. No plant starts, so slightly different than some of the other eligibility criteria for some of the programs. I have that picture of mushrooms there because we always get questions about mushrooms, and yes, fresh mushrooms are eligible. We defined locally grown as grown in Oregon or the bordering counties of Washington, California, Nevada, or Idaho. So we do have a handful of farmers in those bordering states that we authorize, but all of our participants will be in Oregon. Next slide. For the coming season, we are planning to issue checks to 58,000 WIC participants and 60,000 seniors, which is the most we have ever issued, so kind of exciting. Our redemption has slightly been down in these pandemic years. We're hoping to see that inch up a little bit here. Next slide, please. Last season, we redeemed 1.4 million that was paid to local farmers. And in this coming season, we have the potential to pay out up to 2 million to local farmers. So a good chunk of change. For markets become authorized, the main benefit is inclusion in our online directory, which is heavily marketed to our 100,000 plus participants. So that's where they go when they need to figure out where they can shop with their checks. So essentially, we're bringing you more shoppers. A lot of them will be new customers, potentially people who have never been to a farmer's market before. And since you're not really interacting with the checks, there's no tracking or reporting involved on your end. So pretty simple for you. We provide some outreach resources and do a lot of outreach and reminders to participants on our own. And then, of course, while we're all in the business, is it supports our community and our farmers. To qualify as one of our markets, you need to meet on a consistent basis over the course of the season and have at least 3 market vendors over the course of the season who grow, cultivate, or harvest fresh fruits and vegetables or cut herbs in Oregon or bordering county. And I have over the course of the season underlined because you don't have to have those 3 produce vendors at every market all the time. You just need to have 3 eligible produce vendors that at some point come to your market. We do ask that you have at least 1 produce vendor at each open market. If we're sending participants there, we just want them to be able to purchase produce. But since this group is going to most likely fit in these qualifications, we largely put these 2 together to weed out some of the flea markets or the more craft-based markets that don't regularly have produce available. Next slide. So our application process, it opens on April 1st. If your market participated last year, you will receive an email to the email address we have on file. You just need to click through the link there, update your market information, and it's really just your season dates, location times, names, contact information, pretty basic stuff. And then you'll be good to go. If you're a new market who has not participated before, you do need to complete a new application on our website, which is myoregonfarm.org. Again, that'll be available on April 1st. If you need to change the email that we have on file for you, or if you're a new market and you want me to send you an email to remind you when the application is open, I am happy to do that. And you can email me at that address there. Once we take care of all the application business, if you're a new market or a new manager, we do a 30-minute phone or remote orientation. That's most likely going to be with me. It's just a one-time orientation, so you don't need to do it every year. And then we have you sign a 1-year agreement and then send off a little welcome packet with some materials for you. And once all that happens, then we get you populated on our online directory. Next slide. A couple images here just to let you know that this kind of stuff happens. Our WIC clinics in some areas like to partner up with the local markets to come and either distribute checks at the market, which you see really great redemption on those days. Sometimes partner with OSU Extension to do cooking demos or activities, sometimes market tours. This is absolutely not required to be an authorized market, but it's just a fun thing that happens. So if you'd like to connect with any of your WIC clinics, that's another thing that I can help you with. Or if you hear from some of them proactively, this is the type of stuff that they'd be interested in doing. Next slide. As far as the farmers, that's a separate authorization process. We have about 700 authorized farmers currently. Same application that you fill out is what they would fill out again after April 1st. We do a separate farmer training by our state staff, so you're not required to train your farmers on it. They sign a 3-year agreement and then we send them all of their materials. They cannot accept the checks until they're authorized. The bank won't clear them for them, so they definitely need to be authorized in order to accept them. We have a farmer info flyer that sort of has all of the details about the program and what they need to do that we can provide to you if you have some farmers you want to pass that information along to. Be happy to get that to you. Next slide. And I'd just like to end my presentations with this quote from a WIC participant that said, I had never shopped at a farmer's market before I got my checks, and now I come every week and do the snap match as well. So a nice lead into our Double Up Food Bucks presentation coming up. And I just love to show how these programs really work together for folks. And finally, my contact information. So this is me. That's my direct phone line. You can call or text at any reasonable hour. And we'd love to hear from you by email as well. So look forward to answering questions at the end of these presentations. Thank you. Phew, a lot of words there.
Thank you, Katie. Now we're going to hear from Mallory Watson, who is the Double Up Food Bucks Program Coordinator at Farmers Market Fund and is working to help markets offer SNAP matching.
Thanks, Amanda. Hi, everybody. So nice to be here. So like Amanda said, I'm Mallory Watson, the program coordinator at Farmers Market Fund for the Double Up Food Bucks SNAP matching program. We administer and fund that program at markets all around the state. Just a quick overview of what I'm going to talk about today. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the program and how it works, and then I'll talk about the market's role and reporting and outreach and what you need to do to apply if you're not already a participating market. Next slide, please. Thanks. So Double Up Food Bucks, we like to think of it as a win-win-win. Families bring home more food. Last year, our shoppers reported bringing home more fruits and vegetables, having more food in the house overall, and feeling healthier overall. So it's benefiting families. Our farmers reported making more money, seeing more repeat customers throughout the season, and over $2 million was spent in SNAP and Double Up Food Bucks last year at participating farmers markets. And then, shopping, people are spending their SNAP dollars locally with local farmers, more food dollars are staying in the local economy. Market managers also reported that they felt that Double Up Food Bucks strengthened their market. So just a benefit all around for everybody involved. Thank you. So why do we do incentives for SNAP? As we know, the pandemic has had a huge impact on the number of people experiencing food insecurity. 1 in 4 households in Oregon struggled to afford food last year. Over $160 million in SNAP distributed in Oregon last year. We also know that not a lot of those SNAP dollars are spent at farm direct outlets. Farmers markets are perceived as expensive, but we think that farmers markets should be for everybody, and we hope that Double Up Food Bucks can kind of open the door for folks and help them to feel more comfortable shopping at farmers markets if they've never done it before. This is just a map showing kind of where Double Up Food Bucks was last year in 2021, spread around the state, and we're excited for that to keep growing and to keep reaching more communities with the program. So now we kind of know why and a little bit of background about the program. So let's talk about how it works. On the customer side of things, it should be pretty straightforward. The customer comes to the farmer's market info booth, swipe their EBT card to buy SNAP tokens, and then they're eligible to receive a match of up to $20 a day with Double Up Food Bucks. And then they can take their Double Up and their SNAP and shop in the market for fresh fruits and vegetables and whatever else they want to purchase that day. On the farmers market side of things, and kind of the farmers market role in all of this, the farmers market manager and staff are responsible for vendor communications and making sure that vendors understand the rules of the program. Of course, reimbursing vendors. So once the shopper spends their Double Up Food Bucks with a vendor, the vendor then turns those cards into the farmer's market, and you reimburse them for that. So also supporting communication and outreach efforts, we want to make sure that people know that the program exists at the farmer's market, and that they know they can come and get the benefit there. And then the last big piece is data reporting and evaluation. We're funded by 2 federal grants as well as an appropriation from the state of Oregon. So market reporting is a really important piece to help us meet the requirements of our grants. We provide a lot of support to markets to help you complete all of the required reporting. These listed here in this chart are kind of the main requirements that are ongoing throughout the season. At the start, there's a little bit of additional time to onboard your vendors and get the program up and running for the season. And then we do a customer survey during peak season that we also ask markets to help us distribute. But then other than that, we do require weekly tracking of the SNAP and Double Up sales at each market, and maintaining a good sales record each week. And then, of course, also tracking the weekly vendor reimbursements for Double Up Food Buck and maintaining a payment record. And then there's some time each week for additional token accounting, since you'll be counting those Double Up Food Bucks that get turned in so that you can reimburse your vendors. And for most markets, that's going to be about 2 to 3 hours per week. It depends on your market size, though. Some smaller markets might be less. Some really big markets might be more. It just depends. And then monthly, you'll enter your sales and reimbursement totals into an online portal. As long as you are keeping good records throughout the month, it should be really quick to update that. At most half an hour to enter those numbers in online. Then at the end of the year, we ask markets to compile all the records from the year, including annual totals of SNAP and Double Up sales and reimbursements by vendors, and submit those all to us for a reconciliation. And throughout all of this, we're here to provide training and tech support. We provide the currency and printed outreach materials and tracking tools. And yeah, I'm available throughout the year for tech support as well. And then, like I mentioned, we ask markets to help us with outreach efforts. We want to make sure that people in the community know about the program, especially those who may not regularly shop at the market or may not feel like the market is a space for them. So this means, promoting the program through social media, maybe passing out flyers. We do help with that piece as well. Making sure that it's mentioned on your website that you offer Double Up, these kind of things, making your market feel welcoming to everybody in your community. A couple of new things that I wanted to share for 2022. In the past, we've asked markets to help with the Double Up Food Bucks funding by providing 30% of their total need for the program. But this year, we're excited to have enough funding that we can fund all of our markets at 100% of their need for the Double Up program. So all of the incentive dollars are covered by Farmers Market Fund this year. We've also been able to increase the daily match at all markets statewide from $10 per day to $20 per day, which is really exciting. And then the final thing I wanted to share about is a new mini grant program that we're working on. So participating markets will be eligible to apply for additional funding to cover Double Up program related costs, like ordering additional SNAP tokens or paying for additional staff time for counting tokens, things like that. So markets will be able to apply for that hopefully in late March. We're still working on that piece. But for the Double Up Food Bucks program itself, applications are currently open. So if you're a market that already has your SNAP up and running and you've participated maybe in Double Up in the past, or you've had SNAP for at least 1 year, you can apply now. I think Madeline just put the link in the chat for you if you don't have it already. And if you have questions about the application, feel free to reach out to me. If you're a new market or a new to SNAP market, like I said, you need to have offered SNAP for 1 year for the most part. So there's some things you can do to get ready to apply to Double Up next year. So start keeping thorough records, consider any staff or volunteer changes that might need to happen. And yeah, like I said, make sure you've offered SNAP for at least a year. Sometimes we can make exceptions. So if you're not sure if you're eligible to apply, just reach out to me and I can talk you through it. And like I said before, but I just want to reiterate, we're here to help. I'm available anytime to answer questions. You can email me. My email address is here on the screen. And yeah, I think that's it for me. There's always a lot to try to cram into a small amount of time. So if you still have questions or want clarification on anything that I talked about today, please do reach out to me. And thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thank you, Mallory. That's exciting. Great, guys. We have time for questions. If anybody has questions for Lisa, Katie, and Mallory, I think that it worked well last time, Madeline, to have you read questions from the chat first. We can go ahead with that.
So there were some questions previously. I know some of them did get answered. So if you have a question that didn't get answered, type it again. And I'm just going to go from the ones that were just submitted. So Becky has a question for Katie. Is a market that maintains its own garden in order to sell produce in a community booth accept checks directly as a producer? Can they accept checks directly as a producer?
Yeah, great question. We have a number of these, what I just call alternative models, where things aren't as straightforward as farmer's market, but we try to work with anyone who's growing. It might be that we have a staff member be who we authorize rather than the market to sell. But yeah, we absolutely would work with you. So I'd say for that, get in touch with me directly and we'll figure out what makes the most sense.
I see Joshua has his hand up. If you want to hop off mute and ask your question, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I actually have two separate questions for two separate people. One is regarding tokens. Our market is going into the 11th year, and I was looking into the feasibility of changing the token or the design. However, we wouldn't have any way of collecting any of the old tokens, obviously, to not allow those anymore. We'd have to basically allow both styles, if I'm correct, if we chose to go to a new style. Am I right?
Hi, Josh. Yeah, you'd have, because those tokens don't expire, yeah, you'd have to keep letting people turn those in. The thing you can do is once one comes in, you don't let it go back out. And eventually you'll be able to change over your token bank to your new design. And you'll just have to let your vendors know that there's these old legacy tokens that may be out there still coming in.
Well, and with that, with the previous market management, who's since retired in December, there was no accurate accountability or reporting of what tokens went out, which ones came back. So there are like numbers stamped on these tokens, but there is no logbook of how many we started with, how many are out there, any of that information. And we're trying to hone in on getting back on track with all of that. So it's definitely going to be a challenge. And that also leads into my second question, is that historically we were with Novodio. For some reason, we got switched or merged into a company called FIS. And they're now our terminal provider, I guess, or our middleman for SNAP. Is there any benefits to being with either Novodio or FIS? And is there any help that we can get as far as how we should be tracking and reporting our SNAP? Because the process that we used to do apparently was they would write in a spiral notebook who the person was that received the SNAP, how much they received, and they signed their signature apparently, and no daily reports from the terminals were ever submitted to us. There was no true financial reporting other than receipts that were given to the vendors for the tokens and what the port paid out to those vendors for reimbursement, and that's it.
Josh, your question is sounding maybe complicated for this workshop and the few minutes that we have for other people to get questions in. But I think this is something that perhaps Lisa and I can work with you about figuring out the difference between Novodia Group and FIS and what is going on there.
Sure.
But I don't want to
take up the time, but we can be in touch.
Yeah, to the other markets here, saying like having accounting systems is really important. You don't want to get in. You want to avoid Josh's situation of having no records and not knowing what's going on. So,
or bad records.
Yeah.
Oh, thank
you.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck figuring that out. I have a question from Sage, I believe directed to Lisa. For an organization that has 2 markets, we have 2 subscriptions and it costs us double. Can we have just one total pay subscription and device for 2 different markets?
Yeah, that's a great question. But unfortunately, the subscription needs to be tied to one FNS number at a time. So that's why it's the one device per market per subscription. So unfortunately, there's no way to merge them together or you would get your FNS numbers confused. And it's a requirement of Total Pay Go. But it does sound like you'd be eligible for the free year again, if you'd like to take advantage of that.
Great, thank you. Eileen, I see you have your hand raised if you want to hop off mute.
Yes. just going back to the community table thing, if we have someone who is a regular community table participant but doesn't have the volume to become a vendor, or we also have an older vendor that may still have produce but not physically able to vend anymore, can they do the FDNP vouchers and we take them at the market manager's booth? So if they sign up?
Sure. So you're asking,
Hey,
can
Josh,
you accept?
Josh, you're not on mute right now. If you want to pop on mute.
So you're asking,
it's a
can
little
you
difficult
accept those farm direct checks on their behalf? So you'd be the one to collect them and then you'd give them to the farmer.
Correct.
Yeah. I think that would be all right. I'll kind of double check with my people. But yeah, I think that would be fine as long as it's an authorized farmer that's being paid for authorized produce they grow. Yeah, great question.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, next a question from Liz. Are any farmers markets able to accept WIC cards for the weekly, monthly allotment for produce, not the farm direct checks?
Instead of saying no, I'm going to say not yet. So that's our dream, but currently that's not in place right now. So something we're always thinking about and working toward.
All right, and then a question from Stark. If my market moves to a new address not far from the original, do I have to submit a whole new application with FNS?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I would wonder how close the new address is, and how big of the difference is, would be the first thing I'd ask if it is worth it to reapply. And the second part is how long it's been since you got your original permit, because SNAP permits are good for 5 years. So if that 5-year mark is coming up soon anyway, then it's definitely worth it to just reapply with your new address. But if the address is within like a block or two, it might not be worth going through the whole process for that slight change, since you're going to need to change it later anyway. But I would say you can also always contact the farmers market hotline and see if they would be able to just change it. And I can type that number in the chat. But yeah, if your SNAP permit's almost up, then definitely it's worth reapplying.
All right, that's all the questions I see, and I think that is actually right on time. Am I correct, Ashley?
Just right. Good time to go into our poll.
All right.
Okay, yeah, we wanted to see how you guys are feeling close to the end of this workshop. So we're going to do this one a little bit differently than the other poll. We're just going to type answers right into the chat. On a scale of 1 to 5, how confident do you feel after hearing all of this about navigating the different agencies and programs we met today? Put a 1 if you're still feeling lost. Put a 5 if you felt like if another market manager was asking you for advice, could you explain it to them? .85. I love it. That's great. I'm seeing a lot of things above 3. So that's helpful to see. All right, well, let's see. Madeline is going to tell us some more ways to get more info and help from OFMA. So we'll go into that now.
All right, so just a little bit more about what OFMA has to offer to you all. We have a robust library of resources, including recordings of past workshops and learning circles. You can find those all on our website. Most are sorted under the resources tab by topic, but the most recent ones from the past few months are under past event proceedings. And I'll drop links to all of this in the chat when I'm done. We have resources on a broad array of topics, from anti-racism to social media branding to, unfortunately, this is more and more relevant, but like what to do if there's a wildfire near your market. If your board members or vendors are looking for information about certain topics, please do refer them to our website and to our tools and our videos. These resources are meant to be shared, and we want you to spread them far and wide. We also currently host peer learning circles, just like these, every month. Usually they are on the first Tuesday of the month at 11 a.m. Pacific time. We put on these sessions so that you all can connect with each other and other people who run farmers markets and benefit from the wealth of experience and know-how from all the folks involved in the state. Sometimes we'll choose a seasonal or emergent topic to focus on. You don't have to sign up for these sessions. We use the same Zoom link every time, but if you'd like to be put on the calendar reminder so that you're reminded, drop your email in the chat and I will add you to that as well. And then the Washington State Farmers Market Association also wanted us to plug their state conference happening next week, and I will be dropping the link to register to that as well.
Great. Thanks, Madeline. Yeah, lots of great stuff, guys. Check it out. We are close to wrapping up. We have a few more minutes, few more items for you guys. The first one is, please help us with the last action item and offer your feedback on today's time. We're going to put the link for the evaluation down here in the chat. Should just take you a few minutes. We'll give you a minute to click on the link, open it up and complete that. Let us know your thoughts. Take your time with that. You don't have to do it this very moment. But we really value your feedback. It'll help us understand better how these boot camps can be more supportive, more informative, and if we should offer it again next year. So we're eager to hear from all of you, and helpful comments, criticism, questions, all of that, more than welcome. And then just some real quick thank yous for all of our presenters today. You guys are fantastic, just a wealth of knowledge, expertise, and we're so lucky that you offer this in such a generous way to our group. We really appreciate you. It's fascinating. I learned a ton, a lot of learning to do around this, and I feel really informed, and I have a ton of learning to do after this too. And then of course, a huge thank you to WSFMA for hosting us, providing these resources, putting on these boot camps for folks. They sound like it's just been weeks full of great info for everyone. So again, just a quick reminder to check out all of the resources that they have as well. And then thank you guys all for tuning in. We appreciate your time. We know that is a rare commodity these days, and we really appreciate you being here, learning more, and helping to support your markets, help them to grow and get more resources. And it means a lot to us that you spent your afternoon with us. And Amanda's going to tell us if we missed anything in our agenda or if we're all good to go and kind of head out early.
No, I think we got everything covered. Yay.
Hey.
Nice to be able to get to go a little bit early. So thanks.
Fantastic. If anyone has any last minute questions or closing out comments or anything, feel free to hang on. And again, thank you guys all for being here, especially to our presenters too. We'll see you all again soon.
And please do the eval.
Yes.
Do it right now. It only takes a couple minutes.
Be really helpful.